We're here. Yes, season 5. Sorry we're a little late. It's like we've been in the break time, in the non-time, in the anti-ritual time of ritual of the summer, and it took us a little bit of time to get back back in the mode. Um, if only we could project what this next year is going to bring. And I still think, I mean, I have noticed this in internet, or YouTubing, right? The YouTubers either do comedy sketches, and I desperately wish I were funnier, and I can highly recommend all the dog impersonation videos I've been watching for sure. Um, but the other theme or genre of YouTubing that seems to get lots and lots of views is predicting the future as usual. Well, we just don't. I mean, I don't know what to tell you guys, that here on the Mosaic Ark we sail around in the stormy seas of the current condition, not modern audiences, but the currents of the current condition, looking for patterns and trying to understand the storms that keep buffeting everyone around. And I suppose we could play a game at saying, what do we think is going to be coming? We've been right mostly, if you think about it, right? Of the things that we have been talking about over the last few years, to say what we should worry about, what we should pay attention to, the waterways, the narratives, the culture, the political theater as a cultural thing. And it's the thing that I'm thinking about right now at the top of our new season is how tired everybody seems. That the narratives that we've been living, I mean, I think living deeply and ferociously for the last decade, and I do count that 2016 to 2026 is, it's like it's an era. We've definitely lived through an era, and my sense is right now there's like chorus of so many different voices going on that it's very, very hard to have the sense of what the most important thing to be pointing to is, which I think is the most important thing to be pointing to right now, is this feeling of, I mean, not so much we're in the doldrums, but we're in so many different stories all at the same time, and we've been tracking so many, and that is a significant feature of our current online existence, which is not just that you're inundated by information, but that you're inundated by perspectives. And like maybe it's like you look at our Dragon Common Room website, which, you guys, if you're new to the Ark, you can always find a list of all of our episodes under the Mosaic Ark tab page, list of episodes, right? We would that the map that's our banner on the front page of the website. You see the mermaids and the ship being eaten by the sea monster, and the islands and the monkeys and such like that. And if you went and talked to each of them, you'd get a different perspective on what's going on, right? We collect those perspectives. We try to put them into a sort of clear, like, chain of being, diagram of understanding. And I do think certain things are starting to become clear, and are probably going to become clearer as we go along in this year. But we're still in the middle of all of it, and this fits, for those of you again new to our adventures, with where we are as our writers group in working on Draco Chemicus. We're still in the midst of writing Act 5, where our main character is on trial, and after his condemnation, which is pretty much like guaranteed because that's kind of the story we're writing, there's going to be a period of sorrow and loss and contraction before the turn. And I mean, one of the major things I've been watching, of course, in the internet world, is the political commentators getting more and more, like anxiously whiplashing themselves from one side and the other of which perspective they need to be taking on our current events. And the best thing I can suggest is stop trying to call it. right? We've recognized over the last decade how the people that capture our attention best are the ones that trigger us the most with promises of big things are coming. And kind of, if you go back and review what they've said in the past, it's never entirely what they've claimed it's going to be coming. And their viewers, their followers, those who have been influenced by these people, are just, you're watching a soap opera, crafted, showrun by masters. So we here on the Mosaic Ark hope to carry you through some of these storms and confusions in storytelling genres and modes with a greater degree of reflection, maybe, than perhaps you would get anywhere else. So we make this promise to you, our fellow travelers, to try to navigate carefully through these storms that we're experiencing. In any case, we thought tonight we'd start with the topic that we were talking about 3 weeks ago when we stopped streaming. At least we've been traveling for other reasons, and the internet world is not our only life, thank goodness. But the meaning of life and the pursuit of happiness. Welcome to the Mosaic Ark. We're back.
Happy 5th.
Happy 5th. Yes. Can you believe it? I mean,
No,
the time warp is intense, right? The decade of the traveling generally online, and then our traveling. I cannot believe we've been working on Draco Chemicus as long as we have. It's amazing.
no, I can't either.
Yeah.
But the quality is still really good. So pray for us.
Well, we hope we're getting better.
Yeah.
Or more attentive to the craft.
Well, we are, but I mean, the story it gets ever more complex, and the characters are really still shining through with very strong identifiers too. So they're kind of easier to write now, but the story isn't. It's still very complex in the way we're doing it. But
well,
good.
I agree. I mean, we're in Act 5 now, and so a lot of what's happening now is having to fold back in things that we put in the earlier acts, which at the time meant, I mean, this is the great sort of typological game that you play reading the scriptures. It's like there's things in Genesis that come up in the Gospels. Who put them there, right? Are they projected, or are they actually that we had things in the opening scenes, and I think I feel like now we're writing Act 5 in Draco Chemicus. We're in season 5 in Mosaic Ark. That there are things that happened way back at the beginning of our journey that are starting to reveal themselves in their fuller significance, and yet at the time when we first experienced them, and this is true of life generally, right? Things happen in your life when you're 20 or 30, or 50, and then you come back around, and I mean, this is why people say history needs to be written, after some time has passed, because you can't see the full pattern of everything until you've gone through it. But
Mhm.
on the other hand, you actually have to go through it in the first place in order for there to be a pattern. So it's kind of hard to be predicting the future off of that.
We keep finding these little treasures, as we're writing. We go, oh, wait a minute, and then you flip back to like Act 2 or Act 1 and go, oh, we already wrote that. That's so cool, right? It's like finding a 20 in your pocket that you forgot about a year ago.
Always,
it's just like,
yes. Or these things. So we had some family travels in my time away, and some of them include packing things and looking back at stories and seeing scenes, and you find these things from your childhood that you realize had a bigger effect on you than you had appreciated, or that you'd forgotten were there, but suddenly you realize, oh, okay, that fits, that makes sense. And obviously, as a historian, I like finding those correspondences and patterns. On the other hand, there are there's big theological questions about whether that's all. It's like our whole life is projected already, and God's watching us, and are we making real choices, or are we making predetermined choices? The Protestants get themselves twisted all up in knots about this in the 16th century.
Quite a few Catholics still do too, if they think about it deeply enough.
Well, it's a problem, right? It's like how much is our life a work of art, and how much of it is accident, and how much of it is given to us by our own choices, and how much of it is and this, of course, ramified out into going to and from fencing practice, of course, listening to the various political commentators, trying to figure out what story we're in right now. And it's last night I was listening to Rich. Rich does politics. He has some fun guests on.
Yeah.
And they were disagreeing with each other. Right? We got Tom Luongo and Susan Kokinda going, there's one story going on with the City of London and the sort of financial system, and Alex Kramer, their friend, who Tom and Alex have been doing, I realized, we're sort of catching up on the economic version of things. Tom and Alex have been doing discussions for some time now, and they're just diverging more and more on what they think is going on. And Alex spent some time last night saying, all of these things that you all are saying, I can't find any evidence for at all. And they're going, but, the evidence is there if you know how to look. And they're all friends, so they're all sitting there going, well, which is it? And the problem, of course, being always, we're sitting outside these decision-making rooms, and even the people in the rooms that are making the decisions are often lying to themselves or lying to each other about why, the sort of psychological or the why they're doing things always. Yeah. So.
Or maybe they genuinely think they're doing it for one reason, and the person sitting across from them genuinely thinks they're doing it for a different reason.
This is very possible. Not to say that we have personal experience of any of these things.
No,
never perish the thought. You have families. Oh, right. So how do we make good decisions about how to live? Right? These are not small questions. And given that my job involves talking to people always younger than me because I'm teaching them, what do the people in their 20s now think about their own futures and what's going to be coming? And another of the podcasts I listened to on the way driving back is, I guess I have to look him up because I don't remember his name. Ace. He's also in that group of political commentators. American Fire with Ace, and he was again talking through some of the sort of the times we're in. Got a picture of Trump going, "Your time is over" on his cover for that episode, but he gave a very wonderful, and I really needed to hear, moment on how evil it is to be blackpilling and dooming about things, and he talked about how I'm gonna cry. He talked about how he was reading the Gospel of Matthew, and the portion where Jesus says, God cares even for the birds.
Right. Exactly.
How much more does he care for you? And I think the feeding frenzy that people engender on the internet of doom and despair, and they've all betrayed you, and we're all gonna be blown up or stolen from, or
How sad is the life of the person that makes it their business to demoralize everyone around them? You have a choice. Why would you choose that?
indeed. And it astonishes me that there are people who will. I mean, even when, I mean, personally, I can imagine, because my dog died. I'm still not over that. It's hard. It's hard when you have real, I mean, a dog dying is, I get it, guys. It's, you know, well, that's why I've been watching all the John C. Dev dog videos. I don't know. What a surprise, right?
They're really hilarious. You can tell he likes
Oh,
dogs
he
because
loves
he's
dogs.
spot on with the descriptions of how each of the breeds differ
He's so
in
cute.
different situations.
He's so cute with the dogs. I love the beagles. there are beagles that live down the street from me, and they do exactly that, right? I'm a beagle.
Yeah, how different dog breeds respond to burglars breaking in. Have you seen that one yet?
Oh, many times, yes. And
Oh, yeah.
and the ones where
Yeah.
he I like how he's a very good actor with these skits. Puts on different little
Yeah.
costumes to be and God is with his silver wig. Oh, I can do that one without the wig. And Gabriel and God making dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Those are all really fun. It's like, they will be talking about, and the thing is, he is, I mean, I watched a bit of an interview with him. He's a young guy. He's, 30 or so. But he puts nice sort of little comments into some of the things that God and Gabriel talk about of what's going on. And then they do a sort of, anyway, right? I have a dog. I have a new dog to make. Oh, good. Right. So even God's not allowed to doom pill for too long. There's dogs.
Aw.
Anyway, it's like certainly things happen, and it's really hard to pull out of the feeling of betrayal or loss or uh, wreckage of plans. You have a plan for your life and you think it's going to be one way, and then things happen and it's really not. And it's not always, it's not necessarily your fault. I mean, I've had some of those in the last decade of, I thought I was doing everything right, and not according to the people around me. So but on the other hand, it's so important not to despair, and that, the sort of, oh, it's so hard. I'm going to start crying again. I'm not looking for pity, you guys, really. I mean, some pity would be nice, pity, but it's the sort of, American optimism, and we should be, it's, I actually, I just did a very long drive coast to coast. Well, not coast to coast, one coast to the other, but it was Pacific Ocean to Lake Michigan, right? So there you go. My fellow driver and I did as much as we could not on the interstate, which means we actually saw a lot more of America than in my previous summer
That's
trips.
fun.
Yeah, than in my previous summer
That's always a
trips
lot of
when we stayed on the interstate. This was somewhat engineered by the Route 66 celebration this year, because it's apparently 100 years, like 1926 to 2026.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So all of the rest stops that do Route 66 paraphernalia and jokes and stuff like that have ramped it up for sure. But most of the people that we encountered in the early part of the trip, in the, say, California, Arizona part of it, were European. It was like there were French and Germans and Swiss and such all at the restaurants and stuff. So the tourists doing Route 66 this summer are maybe they're carryovers from the World Cup.
I think they are. Yeah. There was a lot of there was a lot of like TikTok videos about European travelers in America. I am very, very cynical, skeptical that wasn't just a real big advertising campaign to come visit the country. I'm still happy they're here. It's a wonderful place to visit. American road trips are amazing because you can drive for 5-6 days and still be in the same country, the opposite of Europe. And yet it's all very different. So it's a pretty cool place to visit. But those videos were fun, and I think that might have influenced them. But that's pretty cool.
Well, I can report that I've seen real people. not just people in
It's not just
TikTok,
the videos.
and not just people
Yeah.
in TikTok videos, but people in restaurants speaking to their fellow people in other languages that weren't American.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well, and it was interesting. It's like it took about a day per state. So California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma,
Yeah.
Missouri, Illinois.
Those are, I drove a similar route about 4 years ago, coast to coast. And it's a shocking amount of space when you drive it. I mean, you can drive literally for hundreds of miles and not see another soul. It's crazy how empty certain sections of this country are.
Well, indeed, a lot of it's desert, but a lot of the desert had been rained on recently, so it was sort of like the Arizona part that we drove
That's
through.
even cooler.
Was
'cause you got
kind
the
of
super
pale
blooms
green.
then.
You get this sort of pale green desert effect. Yeah.
But it's rare. There was a super bloom in Death Valley this year too. It hasn't happened in about a decade.
I still have never seen Death Valley. I clearly have to do this trip again.
I should do a road trip.
we would have a lot of fun with there will be a new dog. I mean, this trip was dogless. Although in order to have a dog at the first rest stop, we got a bobblehead.
Oh.
put it on the dash of the rental so that we had the bobblehead going through. And
what was it a bobblehead of?
It's a dog.
Oh, just
we
the
bought
dog.
a bobblehead dog, and the dog sat on the dash and led us through. Like it was sort of a beagle, so it led us
Did you call him
through.
Scout?
I don't know if we named it. The dash dog. He's a dash dog.
Yeah, he's leading the way. He should be called Scout.
A good point. Yes, Scout's a good name. That's actually my husband and I are still debating the new dog name. When the new dog presents itself, we need to find the dog and get the new dog name. So we should
hold a vote here with the listeners. What are the front runners of the dog name?
Okay, well, so we have a fair number of people hanging out with us, guys, to suggest dog names. I want to name the dog Sam because Samwise Gamgee is the most loyal of servants, and yes, my husband's not so keen on Sam. But he keeps suggesting other names that I don't like, and I'm like, I'm not going to change my mind until you come up with a different one that I like. So
that's true.
I'm stuck on Sam.
Put up or shut up.
Well, Sam. It's just Sam. He's so it's of a Tolkien name. We can't get another corgi because it'll just break my heart. So other Hobbit names just don't feel quite the same. Like it's not a hobbit. It's not going to be a hobbit dog. It's going to be a regular dog with legs. Mm-hmm. Dogs have legs. They have these long legs. Hobbit.
Corgis are very short.
Corgis don't have. I shared this on my DCR Telegram. Guinea pigs, which I have had many of in my life, have longer legs when they run. they stretch their little legs out and leap and set. Yeah, I love. I
can't imagine them doing anything other than modeling. That's unusual.
They can run, and they can run actually pretty fast. I used to have guinea pigs in my dorm rooms in college, and they orbit the room, in doing little races, guinea pig races. So okay,
I have a funny and yet horrifying guinea pig story from a friend of mine from Ecuador.
Okay, never mind. My teacher in college went to Chile or Peru to adopt her daughter, and during that time, this is back in the 80s, right? She found the pictures of the Pascal guinea pigs. So
yep. Yes, yeah. My friend went to visit his grandma. They were from the city, I think, but grandma was very much a country gal. And she had this pen of guinea pigs, and she said, "Would you guys like to have some of my guinea pigs?"
And she meant to eat them.
Oh yes, Grandma, yes. Oh yeah, I think she butchered them.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
For them because they're food. Now I met an Italian woman once. She had the exact same attitude towards rabbits. So
yeah.
That's here, food there.
Okay, you guys, you realize in our usual inimitable Mosaic Ark way, this is all completely topical to our theme, which is the pursuit of happiness.
Actually, it is.
See?
Come to think of it.
It's totally. And the specifics of what is America built on, and what kinds of ideals are we built on, such that we end up with, road trips. And road trips are interesting because the main thing about the road trip, most of this Route 66 road trip, is the landscape. There's a Shriners Mosque shrine in Springfield, Missouri, that's worth the drive around the city to catch a glimpse of. But and this was interesting. We also stopped in Fulton, Missouri.
Yay!
I was born in St. Louis because my dad's family came from St. Louis, and my parents were in med school there when I was born. But I'd never been to Fulton, Missouri, as far as I knew. I mean, maybe I hadn't, and I don't think we're related to those Fultons. But what is in Fulton, Missouri? But Westminster College. Why is Westminster College important, other than the columns surviving from the fire that took out their first administration building that they left there? They look like they hold up the sky, right? And we encountered some freshmen, or some women who were clearly getting ready to welcome the freshmen the next day, because they were all dressed up and taking pictures and stuff. They explained the columns to us. But the reason that Fulton, Missouri is so radically important, because at Westminster College, in the gym, in 1946, Winston Churchill gave his Iron Curtain speech.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
that's distinctive.
I knew about that from looking up Churchill for Eurociv, and it's Fulton, Missouri. Where is that? Why is he there? He was friends with Truman, and Truman was from Missouri, and so he invited him to come give this speech. And it's the one in which Churchill describes, an Iron Curtain is descending on Europe and dividing the free world from the.
Talk about a doom pillar. Not that he was wrong. He was.
Well, the thing is, I'd rather think Churchill was inventing it for his own purposes in some respect, right? It was a rhetorical ploy to encourage the West. It was 1946. It was like they didn't even have the bomb yet in the Soviet Union. And it was Churchill's follow-up or gambit to encourage the feeling of there should be a United States of Europe. Which
okay.
That's the speech I use in my Eurociv. And can you hear the conversation going on in the background?
No.
Okay. Because
a tiny bit, but it sounds like squeaks. That's all.
Squeaks. I'm going to tell them to take it to the front room, guys. Oops, I can't do that. Delete.
Now I hear it.
Yeah, guys, I'm on camera. Just saying. I can text them. We can hear you.
I would text my son. It didn't help.
Go to the front room. Okay. So you could say, it's like in the middle of the trip, or the middle of the country, is the most significant defining rhetorical event of modernity, or one of them, right?
One of them, yeah.
I mean, we also went fairly close. We saw the very large array of radio dishes in New Mexico, and that road took us north. We saw a sign north of Trinity site, so near the bomb, near where I've been to Los Alamos lots, but near where they did the test of the atomic bomb. So this is all, this is all astonishingly topical to what's the point of it all anyway? Is it Masons? Is it bombs? Is it, free world versus communism? Like the sort of the meaning of the United States, which seems to be constantly a thing that people keep arguing about. What is the meaning of our country?
Right. So-and-so is just as American as any other so-and-so, even though they want to destroy it, tear it down, and hate it.
Well,
and it just got here 2 minutes ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, really?
So some of it, I also came home and read a book by one of my medievalist colleagues on the Southwest, the American Southwest before the Spanish. So, and those peoples I know, right? Chaco Canyon, I didn't know the ones down around Phoenix, except for as people that do fiddle tunes that our teacher taught us. But there are settlements, and right in the Pueblo regions of New Mexico, and of course Cahokia Mounds around St. Louis and such. So they could, some would say they were here first, but they weren't there when the Spanish showed up because the climate had changed. So climate change is not new. Yes, the climate had changed. Apparently, there was a medieval warm period in North America, just as there was in Europe, and the people in the American Southwest benefited from that. But then, when it cooled down again in the 14th century, they all had to move because the crops wouldn't grow anymore.
Or maybe it got too hot.
No,
and the crops wouldn't grow anymore.
No, it cooled down. It cooled down. The cooling period was after is 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th century. That's the cooling period of the Earth. And then what we're living in modernity is a new warming period.
I'm reliably informed it's because I drive a car.
You know that's not true.
You're right. It wasn't reliable.
Right. No. Another of the places we stopped was a casino in Oklahoma, one of the tribal casinos. That was interesting. And then we listened to a video, an interview with someone talking about how the boomer women are gambling all of their children's inheritance away. It was an eventful time, right? Again, doing the road trip thing, searching for America. What is America? Where is it? Who is it? How is it? Is it the people you see on the interstate? Is it people you see off the interstate? Is it, is our main purpose religious, or is it commercial? Which seems, or political or military. Like, what are we? Okay, they've come up with some names. Dog name, Mao Dib. Okay, I think that's just asking for trouble, Gnarly Bird. Or Atreides. Okay. No, I don't want a blue-eyed dog that tries to take over the world.
That's hard to call them apart.
However, but Gnarly Bird, since we are looking at Australian Shepherds and they have blue eyes, you may be onto something.
That's true. That's very good. Yeah.
Climate change is not new. Who would have guessed? Indeed. Right. Okay. So what are we up to? What is our country supposed to be about?
Freedom.
Okay.
Liberty. Liberty.
Explain that. Explain what we mean by liberty.
Well, I've read John Stuart Mill for the very first time, and all I can say succinctly is that Mill is the reason we can't have nice things.
Oh, please explain. So, guys, to get it's like I gave Casey homework because this is one of the founding texts that everybody says, right? We are about liberalism, right? And
well, it would be the founding text of the 20th century's move towards communism and leftism and liberalism, and for sure. And I'm so sorry, I could only get through about 40 pages of this because he's very repetitive. Right?
Oh, he's also incredibly long-winded. If you try to read sections of it, like it's I'm going to quote a little bit to you, the sentence never ends. You think I'm long-winded, right?
That didn't bother me as much as a couple of other themes. I wrote a bunch of notes on sticky notes, and I used a highlighter, and I said, I could probably get through these 100 pages in one day, but I'm not going to be able to because I keep writing notes like schizoid.
Okay, I asked you to do this because I've been trying to finish some other stuff today, and including reading Northrop Frye on literary criticism. So we got some more fodder to come into our storytelling. Tell us what you learned about liberty from wrestling with John Stuart Mill's 1859 pamphlet.
Wow, that's a long pamphlet.
It is a little. It's not. It's shorter when it's not in book form, but in book form it could be like 200 pages. In pamphlet form, it's about 75 or 80.
Well, he's very contradictory, right? It's kind of so. Well, yeah. In the one hand, he wants to be a free speech absolutist. He wants to be a liberty absolutist, and says, it's just despotism. If you, how did he put it? Yeah, right. The only thing that shouldn't be allowed is when you do evil to somebody else. And, well, here's when you just start defining somebody else. because in several places he says some people just aren't, to paraphrase, sophisticated enough and advanced enough and progressive enough to actually be able to handle this. And so, of course, despotism is a legitimate mode of government in dealing with barbarians, provided the end be their improvement, according to him. What is improvement? And the means justified by actually affecting that end. So he says something like that several times throughout the introduction in chapter 1. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I just can't bear chapters 2 and 3. A pamphlet.
Okay, you have instantly proven yourself smarter than most people in academia.
I'm baffled by why he's lionized so much. I mean, I knew his name. I just always assumed he was a smart guy,
Well,
and I'm reading this thinking he can't even agree with himself. He contradicts himself over and over again.
Well, indeed. So recognizing that it's when people talk about classical liberalism, that phrase that they use of saying, we as conservatives should be classical liberals, they mean Mill.
Mm-hmm. And if they're reading Mill, I can understand where the abject hatred of Catholicism comes from, because it's replete in this document. He doesn't like religion, the Christian religion, let's be specific. He does not like the Christian religion at all. He's very cynical of it, but of all of them, of course, Catholicism is the absolute worst. Some of it you can hear, like, 19th century, English schooling kind of propaganda, black legend propaganda.
He actually didn't go to school.
Wow. Well, the propaganda found him.
He was educated. He was homeschooled by his dad. He learned to read Greek by the time he was like 4, and Latin by the time he was 7, something like that.
He loves Socrates.
Yeah,
he practically deified him, and that's real apparent too.
But then he hated his father because when he tried to do a debate as a young man, he lost and he was mocked.
By his father?
No, by the people who were in the debate with him. They called him mechanical man, who could only just spout off, I guess, other people's ideas that he'd learned in all this drilling that his dad had put him through.
Sounds like he won it.
Well,
they were being petty.
Yeah.
At 12 years old, so a bit, that's kind of hard to take.
No, he wasn't 12. He was like 20 or so. So, but he was actually homeschooled by his father, who was, I think friends with Jeremy Bentham, was utilitarian and believed that he was going to make, Mill into the perfect intellectual by teaching him the ancient languages when he was a kid.
Well, that wasn't unusual to teach what we consider grade school Greek and Latin, was it? Mill
was precocious in how young he claimed to have read all of the things that he did. We based on Mill's later production, we assume he did, but no, yes, learning the classics was standard school fare, but he didn't learn it in school. He learned it at home.
Well, I thought it was interesting that this was first published in 1859, because the Communist Manifesto was published in 1849, so like just 10 years earlier. And I wondered if there's
48.
Well, 48.
It matters because the Communist Manifesto comes out in February of 1848, and all the revolutions are that year.
Okay. I had just wondered, and I don't know the answer. I just wondered as I was reading this. So that date looks significant. So I looked it up, and I know Marx wrote it in London, or maybe not London, somewhere in England. I wondered if that somewhat influenced this, but it turns out Marx.
You are suspicious in the right direction. Yeah. Yes. Well, okay.
Marx was not a fan of Socrates. I gathered, but from just a quick search, but. You can correct me on that.
Oh, whether it's the communists versus the liberals as a sort of pairing, you mean?
Well, I mean, certainly the 20th century. As I'm reading this, I think this sounds like a way to undermine and destroy a cohesive community, which in many places in the United States existed in the 20th century before Marxists started kind of creeping into academia and government. And McCarthy was right, even the military, it started creeping in there. And a lot of it in the culture was very subversive. And it was like, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law, which is Aleister Crowley, right? So he was all part of that too. This movement of the 20th century to undermine morals and culture.
Okay, which of the two are you talking about, Mill or Marx at this point?
Oh, I'm talking about Mill, not Marx. I've not read Marx at all.
So this is interesting, right? Given the flow of our conversation, one could have assumed that you were actually talking about Marx and the communists trying to destroy society, but you were talking about Mill.
Right. I was talking about Mill, which I kind of want to read Marx after reading this, because I think it was probably smarter. That doesn't mean the conclusions were correct, but it was probably written better than this. God, I hope. Anyway, but I don't know.
Why? No, Casey, come on. Classical liberalism is supposed to be the traditionalist society that we are trying to preserve as whatever we are, not communists. I mean, Churchill gave his Iron Curtain speech in order to defend liberal democracy, right? And
what does that phrase mean, liberal democracy? I wonder now. I wonder what that means.
But liberalism, come on. And what you're saying now sounds like what Mill is out to destroy communities? Destroy?
Without a doubt.
Oh, please say more.
Without a doubt, because he doesn't believe, according to what I read, he does not believe.
You're completely accurate in all of this, and I'm loving that I gave this to you completely.
I got it right.
Yes, you did. Completely blank. You're like, here, please read this because we need to talk about the meaning of life in America. And you have hit every single, like, you're suspicious of him. He's disruptive. He's anti-Christian. He's like, okay, but how then? I mean, maybe nobody's been reading Mill. Maybe they've just been thinking, oh, it's liberty. So that's apparently what we're supposed to care about. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The word's the same on liberty. It must be about the same thing.
Right. It must be the same thing because they're using the same words, right? Same word, different dictionary.
Yeah.
That's what's going on here.
So how would you say how is elaborate on what you just summarized about how the effect that his arguments would in fact have on the communities across our great continent?
Well, every tradition, specifically every Christian tradition, is suspect and is dictatorial and stifles and makes suffer human freedom. And so it must be, if not eradicated, then at least controlled. And then elsewhere, he'll say that, controlling things is bad unless it's for the good, which I'll define, which he doesn't say, but it's kind of implied.
Oh, no, he does actually say that.
I stopped reading after page 40, remember? I just couldn't take it.
But you got halfway through.
It wasn't that smart.
That he,
anyway. So
I have some passages that I'll share with everyone once we've shown how well you read this already without my help. Wait, but then what's liberty? Like, if you're saying there's a despotism of who? Just a second. I'm being too distracted. And I'll mute.
Yep. Good. Dead air is supposed to be horrible, but I never know what to say without the professor here. I'll wait.
I think they're moving.
Okay.
Okay. You didn't feel my dead air. You're supposed to be telling us.
I filled my dead air by saying dead air is terrible, but I don't know what to say without the professor here, so I'll just wait.
That's fine. I keep interrupting you, and I shouldn't. Speak at length. Speak at length about what you've learned from Mill, and in as much like structure as you can, based on how weird he is.
He seems to be an anarchist. There are people who don't believe there should be any government. And what little I read, he believes in a limited government, which is what makes this so insidious, because our actual founders believed in a limited government too. But like I said before, same words, different dictionary. Mm-hmm. What does liberty mean? What does happiness mean? To him, it means to do anything you want so long as you're an adult. I found that part kind of creepy, that he emphasized that as long as consenting adults, right? I'm like, is this a licentious thing we're getting at here? It kind of sounded like that. It's mentioned just briefly in the introduction around page, I don't know, 576. It's really long. I'm exaggerating a little bit. I think he is for the destruction of any limits of any rails, that the individual is everything, that he should be able to say anything he wants and do anything he wants, so long as it's adults, which he said. But he doesn't believe a government should be gotten rid of. He does believe it should be used to control certain people, including, gosh, did he mention? I think he mentioned. I don't want to say if he didn't mention it, but it was heavily implying that certain races couldn't be trusted. Certain societies. He said, and this was 1859. Slavery was still legal in this country. It was not legal in Britain. It wasn't illegal in some of their colonies. It wasn't enforced as strongly as it probably could have been. But yeah, he wasn't above using government to coerce people into allowing as liberal a society as could possibly exist, which kind of sounds like the Biden years here. Because yes, anything goes, and some of it looked quite repulsive. If you don't believe me, look at pictures of the White House and the parties they had there on the lawn, and people disrobing for the cameras because they felt emboldened by the libertinism that was promoted. At the same time, they were locking people in their homes and closing people's businesses and shutting down churches. So that had to be Mill's dream. Those 4 years, it was a nightmare for most. And I would like to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's long dead, and I don't know him, but I certainly hope he didn't picture that. Didn't picture that, what happened during those years, or what happened behind the Iron Curtain, or what happened in any dictatorship. He seemed to be okay with dictatorship as long as it was a dictatorship that agreed with his beliefs, which was that people shouldn't have beliefs.
Yeah. Did you? The most fascinating thing to me is, in fact, where he places, and you may have not gotten this far. When you say you got 40 pages in, all of the printings of it are different. What sections did you read?
Yeah. So it was the introduction and chapter 1. Section 1.
Okay, so you read of the liberty of thought and discussion.
Yes. It was mostly about free speech, what I was reading about.
Right.
Thought and discussion, but he was also very clear of doing whatever you want to. So what made me think of Karl Marx and Marxism, as I understand it with my very limited knowledge, is different than communism, straight Stalinism. Because I think Marx was writing about a financial system. But what made me think of that is, the subversion that happened during the 20th century, the subversion of the culture that was done in the name of liberalness. And so when people say, what's classical liberalism? And I said, well, what is a liberal democracy? What does that mean? We want to defend our liberal democracy. Well, what does that mean? We already had in our Constitution, there's no compulsion. There's no official religion. You're not allowed to establish it. There's an anti-establishment clause, not an anti-religion clause. So that was taken, and those words taken, and the different dictionary definition was used, and it was, well, you're not allowed to pray on public property.
Right.
So the stuff like that would happen. So that was very destructive, and it continues to be destructive in certain regions, depending upon who's in control of it. Somebody's always going to be in control of it. So my idea of what is a liberal democracy is that people get a vote, and they get to vote on laws that allow adults to do anything they want, so long as they're not hurting somebody else.
Well, that phraseology is, in fact, Mill's. The sort of liberal.
Yes.
The liberal is,
yes.
It's like, you're bounded. Your freedom is bounded by hurting other people, which means,
and exists today, which means you have to dehumanize people if you want to hurt them, like enslave them or kill them before they're born.
Exactly
what happened.
But that was considered a problem before Mill came up with his idea. So, the sort of recognition of the humanity of every soul is Jesus, not Mill.
Yeah.
And Mill, as you say, is
I'll be
pretty
disappointed to hear that.
well, is pretty dismissive of what he claims that all morals that we recognize in modernity are in fact classical, not Christian.
Pagan, and that sounds familiar too.
Right.
That's either making a resurgence in Broland on the internet, or it just never left, and it's just getting a voice. That yes, this is the idea of the noble savage, which was supposedly a Christian idea, has been transformed into the noble pagan, and not only
the noble
pagan,
pagan
but
is
pagan.
Mill. That's
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find it.
I think some people were playing around with that in the 18th century, though, too, weren't they, with that idea?
Okay, we shouldn't do this because then I'll never get back to Mill.
Okay.
So no, what Mill he makes an argument when he's making his argument about which I don't have I have notes on Mill, and I don't have the pamphlet with the page numbers that I have in my notes. So I can do some
okay.
I can do some of this off the top of my head, but I can't
I like this quote I highlighted here. No society in which these liberties are not, on the whole, respected is free, whatever may be its form of government, and none is completely free in which they do not exist absolute and unqualified. But then he goes on to list a bunch of qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of the. It's almost like he's reluctantly saying, well, nobody's going to accept this unless we say you can't murder people, so I guess we'll have to be some qualifications there. To which some more demonic, cynical people would answer, well, what's people? Right? Who counts?
Okay, you've picked up on the problems in it, and what I'd like to help everyone see is why it's even worse than you've just said.
It's even worse than I said. I can believe that.
It's even worse than you've said. So the argument about the paganism, it's in so one, you can think at some point that he's saying it's appropriate for okay, so elements of Mill that everybody sort of knows. But when I've been teaching Mill every other year in Eurociv for decades, and I hated this text from the beginning. What puzzled me about it was when I first started teaching it, I was like, but just everybody believes this, right? And what is, I was younger and trying to learn how to teach medieval stuff as well, and medieval ideas and arguments and such are usually at odds with people believe now. And so pedagogically I could go in and say, well, you don't think this, but what if I can show you it from this other perspective, and now you can see it, and now it can make sense, and that's fun, right? With Mill, it was harder because it was like, but everyone, you just agree already, right? And so I had a difficulty because I'm thinking, well, and then we'd have staff meetings when I'm saying, in academia, it's a hard text to deal with too, because I remember hearing colleagues in our staff meetings talking about the text and giving ways to introduce it and stuff like that. And I just couldn't get any, it seemed you'd be reading it and stuff would just slide off, right? You'd be saying, well, but okay, press, and you're suddenly sliding back off into tolerance. Right, that toleration is actually John Locke's argument in the Letter on Toleration. Mill isn't actually about toleration; he's about liberty and liberty of the individual. And this, it all sounds great because, he says things like this that make, this is from my blog post that I did on Free Speech Fundamentals Fail, because at that point I'd finally figured out that Mill was up to no good. He says such unremarkable things, for example, as if all mankind minus one were of one opinion and only one person were of the contrary opinion, mankind would be no more justified in silencing that one person than, if he had power, would be justified in silencing mankind. Sounds great, right? If one person disagrees, he doesn't believe it at all. Or the whole strength and value of human judgment depending on the one property that it can be set right when it is wrong. Reliance can be placed on it only when the means of setting it right are kept constantly at hand. So you have to have constant argument, right? In the case of any person whose judgment is really deserving of confidence, how has it become so? Because he has kept his mind open to criticism of his opinions and conduct. Again, don't we all agree, right? Um, uh, yeah, or the dictum that truth always triumphs over persecution is one of those pleasant falsehoods which men repeat one after another till they pass into commonplaces, but which all experience refutes. History teems with instances of truth put down by persecution. And I say my colleagues in academia know these truths to be self-evident. It's literally the kinds of things we use to argue for academic freedom. That, the true knowledge only comes from debate, which is ironic given that Mill found himself embarrassed when he actually got in a debate. That, if one person has a different idea, he should be, you'd be encouraged to continue to express it because and Mill says some other quite practical things, like you only really know something if you've had to debate and defend it. So yeah, don't we all agree with that? And he does make this argument, weirdly enough, that, Christians in the early centuries had a better grasp of their theology because they had to defend it all the time. Now they're just, limp and boring. In the 19th century, apparently. So, you read all of that and everybody just kind of nods along, because isn't it the creed of our institutions, our intellectual institutions, that you should have debate and the one individual voice should get to stand up and say, but no, I think we need to re-examine this.
Yeah, academia didn't do itself any favors in the last 10 years. I heard my whole life this phrase, right? I don't agree with what you said, but I would defend to the death your right to say it. And then went from that to put on your mask and shut up.
Mm-hmm.
These people are liars. Mill was a liar.
Mill was a liar, but ironically, so what would Mill? I wrote my blog post about him in 2018 when the academic conversation was on another path at that point, right? We were apparently still at the University of Chicago in favor of academic freedom, and I was trying to demonstrate that what it looks like if you do. It's like you have to argue with people and feel test your ideas out, and we're still no better at that 8 years later than we were. We in academia generally, right? We've been watching the discussion about Cambridge right now.
Oh yeah. And that professor that just got fired that exposed his plagiarism.
Right. So the problem being, and maybe Mill is actually right here. It's like, why is all of that happening? Why is it so hard, even in an institution allegedly founded on the exercise of debate and ideas that Mill says is absolutely necessary to the testing of opinions? Why is it so hard for people to hold to that? Here he's less idiotic than you might imagine. I think you didn't get this far, maybe. So in chapter 3...
No, I didn't get to chapter 3.
I think it's chapter 3. Let me just double check. Okay, you get past the liberty of thought and discussion. You get to the great passage on This is the PDF version that I found online is paginated differently, and the pages they're probably easier to read.
You saw what it did to my Pope 3 weeks ago. It was all messed up.
Yeah. Okay, this is silly. Okay, here we go. It is chapter 3 of individuality as one of the elements of well-being, right? So he's saying he's given in the first 2 chapters the reasons which make it imperative that human beings should be free to form opinions, to express their opinions without reserve, and how terrible it is if you don't have freedom of thought and freedom of opinion and freedom of expression and debate and such like that, right? But you've been picking up, even in the earlier parts of the treatise, on where he locates the problem. Where is the tyranny of his day actually coming from?
His tyranny of his day is coming from compulsion to belief or speaking certain things, and he completely ignores the fact that he's contradicted himself yet again. See, a person may cause evil to others not only by his actions, but by his inaction. And in either case, he is justly accountable to them for the injury. And here he's talking about not speaking up.
Right.
So, right, silence is violence. So you have to agree with the consensus.
Okay, this is where he gets horribly tangled up, right? So he starts off
Hmm.
with um he starts off with uh that there's a tyrant now. This is actually in the part that you read at the very beginning, that he
Hmm.
says he names that tyrant. Um, he's been talking about, when we argue in political theory, we worry about tyrants and government power and such, but um, now in 1859 we have this completely different problem of tyranny. Whose is it? Where is it coming from?
Well, it's coming from the church. It's coming from Christians.
Uh,
That's what I picked up from it.
yeah, sort of, right? It's society, right? What's ironic about it is at some points in my life of reading Mill, I picked up on elements of what he says, and like there's a great passage at the end of chapter 2 where he talks about how difficult it is to say anything and people start screeching at you and such, and I'm like, wow, that's an accurate description of what I've just gone through. So
Yeah.
he is actually perceptive in that sense, that he's talking about the tyranny of the majority, reflecting, like other tyrannies, the tyranny of the majority was at first and is still vulgarly held in dread, chiefly as operating through the acts of the public authorities. Okay, so that would be like the government, or the COVID mandates and things like that. But reflecting persons perceive that when society is itself the tyrant, society collectively over the separate individuals who compose it, its means of tyrannizing are not restricted to the acts which it may do by the hands of its political functionaries. Society can and does execute its own mandates, and if it issues wrong mandates instead of right, or any mandates at all in things with which it ought not to meddle, it practices a social tyranny more formidable than many kinds of political oppression, since, though not usually upheld by such extreme penalties, it leaves fewer means of escape, penetrating much more deeply into the details of life and enslaving the soul itself. Protection, therefore, against the tyranny of the magistrate is not enough. There needs protection against the tyranny of the prevailing opinion and feeling. Against the
Right. Well, that's where the subversion comes in. It must be subverted for the individual to have freedom.
Okay, the quiz is why he in 1859 is so obsessed with this tyranny of the majority. Where is it coming from?
Are you asking me to take a guess about his character?
Well, you already have in some sense, right? And you picked up on the fact that he wants to have you didn't say it out loud, but he wants to have a sexual life that he feels others have disapproved of.
Right. He mentions Christianity in several places, and his very poor opinion of it, his very poor opinion of Christians,
Mm-hmm.
his very poor opinion of Christians who hold positions of authority,
Mm.
who treat dismissively, even in cases of law where the law should not have been dismissed, people who don't profess any belief in God. So he's very aware of the prevailing societal norm being Christian, because if any one of them does the wrong thing, like a judge that wrongfully dismisses a case against a thief, then that's an indictment of all of Christianity, or it's at least an indictment of Christianity having any kind of say culturally en masse. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well enough. He realizes he can't get rid of the religion, so it needs to be completely subverted.
This is fair and this is true, and he definitely is no fan of what he doesn't even believe in Christian morality. He thinks that it's in that section in chapter 2.
He believes it's bad.
He believes it's bad, and he believes that the things that we actually consider virtuous in modernity are in fact the classical pagan virtues, and he'll say that anything you actually think is like Stoicism or something like that is good and socially virtuous. It's not Christian. The
It's absurd.
Christian virtues are not, in fact, socially appropriate. Yeah, so he
said
does do that.
There was never a Christian monarch that was good. That was a good example of anything, which is absurd. Even in England, I mean, which saint is it that was also king? Is it Alfred?
Let's not go there. We don't know enough about most of them to be able to make that kind of claim. Edward the Confessor is considered saintly, but he keeps celibacy, and the reason that we end up with the Normans is because he has no children. So whether that's a good thing on his part, we don't know. Right? Mill he's not allowing like actual virtue to Christians. But when he's talking about society and saying society is the tyrant and you need to be able to have the individual standing up against the society, this is the tricky thing to pay attention to. Why in 1859 is he so oppressed by society?
Good question. I don't know. Why is he feeling so oppressed by society? What does he want to do that society won't let him?
Oh, marry Harriet Taylor, who he dedicates this essay to, but she's married to somebody else while he's in love with her for ages, and then her husband dies, and then they get married. That primarily.
That sounds familiar. That scenario repeats itself a lot with these philosophers.
Oh, it does indeed. He's very in favor of women's rights too. Harriet and she should be free to express. He's called a feminist philosopher, a feminine philosopher.
Oh my God, he's a male feminist.
Oh yeah.
No wonder I don't like him.
He's the OG male feminist, right? He actually is.
Shouldn't have said that.
Okay. But this is where he thinks the problem is. So you need, in the first place, you need people that are able to see around the truths that the society's had. So he says there always need of persons not only to discover new truths and point out what were once truths are true no longer, but also to commence new practices and set the example of more enlightened conduct and better taste and sense in human life. This cannot well be gainsaid by anybody who does not believe that the world has already attained perfection in all its ways and practices. It is true that this benefit is not capable of being rendered by everybody alike, but there are but few persons in comparison with the whole of mankind whose experiments, if adopted by others, would be likely to be of any improvement on established practice. But these few are the salt of the earth. Without them, the human life would become a stagnant pool. Not only is it they who introduce good things which did not before exist, it is they who keep the life in those which already existed. Special pleading? I mean, really. If there were nothing new to be done, would human intellect cease to be necessary? Would it be a reason why those who do the old things should forget why they are done and do them like cattle, not like human beings? It is interesting that he's touted as conservative, right? Because he's actually saying what you need are eccentrics.
Conservative.
You need, well, I mean, just the general like conservative, like when people ask me to like say things that are, in support of the Western tradition, they think I'm going to say things that sound Millian. Guys, no, you need to.
Wow.
You need to understand what he actually says, which is he doesn't believe
things that were once true that are no longer true. What is a woman? What is a woman?
It's all straight out from Mill. You got to test everything. And he goes on to talk about how you need eccentrics, because the eccentrics, the geniuses, they're the only ones that are going to push back on these traditional concepts. And
it would have been fun to see him meet Tesla in all of his devout Catholic glory.
Oh, well, it gets better.
Talk about an eccentric.
Okay. Would it be a reason why those who do the old things should not own cattle? Right. There's only too great a tendency in the best beliefs and practices to degenerate into the mechanical. And unless there were a succession of persons whose ever recurring originality prevents the grounds of those beliefs and practices from becoming merely traditional, such dead matter would not resist the smallest shock from anything really alive. And there would be no reason why civilization should not die out, as in the Byzantine Empire. His example.
I can't unhear it. Yet he dedicated this to some other man's wife.
Well, he's
dead.
This
was all to get into bed.
Some other man's widow, right? They're married by then, and she's dead, right? She dies, and he actually writes this in mourning for her. But he claims at the beginning that many of the ideas were hers. You're frozen. In shock and horror. You froze.
Oh, that's funny.
Well,
I saw you
I
freeze.
just taking it. It's like you were frozen in horror at what I
Okay.
just said. That no, Harriet. So he and Harriet have got married, and then they don't get to be married for very long. And when she dies, and then he writes this after her death, and he writes it in her memory, and saying that many of the ideas were hers and came out of conversations that they had.
Oh my gosh. So was she reading Mary Wollstonecraft, I wonder?
Oh, probably. Persons of genius, it is true, are and are always likely to be a small minority. You picked up on his elitism, indefinitely. Yeah. But in order to have them, it is necessary to preserve the soil in which they grow. Genius can only breathe freely in an atmosphere of freedom. Persons of genius are, ex vi termini, more individual than any other people, less capable, consequently, of fitting themselves without hurtful compression into any of the small number of molds which society provides in order to save its members the trouble of forming their own character. If from timidity they consent to be forced into one of these molds and let all that part of themselves which cannot expand under the pressure remain unexpanded, society will be little the better for their genius. If they are of a strong character and break their fetters, they become a mark for the society which has not succeeded in reducing them to commonplace. To point it with solemn warning as wild, erratic, and the like, much as if one should complain of the Niagara River for not flowing smoothly between its banks like a Dutch canal. I'm going to keep going, but just breathe in. I mean, this does mean that the sort of liberal project of breaking society by experiment is embedded in Mill. It's part of what he argues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So he's classical liberalism is destructive liberalism. That's why my journey on this path, right, started with Jonah Goldberg's book on liberal fascist or whatever, liberal fascism, and
liberal
I'm like,
fascism.
oh my gosh, he's right. The streams crossed. And that's why I say,
well, it was a great cover too, the smiley face, right?
No, but the streams of, whatever Churchill was giving his speech about in Fulton, Missouri, right? The sort of liberty and communism, the slavery and freedom of whichever it is, and whose side are you on? They did cross, and liberal society now, the people, that's why the left accurately describes itself as liberal. But it's weird because it's not really populist. It never has been. It can't be if you follow what Mill's arguing, because he's arguing for the eccentric genius who tests society by way of his experiments. And if you stifle these people, society will stagnate.
Stifle these people by having standards of public behavior.
Well, why should it matter as long as you're not hurting someone else?
Yeah.
I mean, that is the argument, right?
Define hurting. I've said nothing. Well, silence is violence, right? When it rhymes, it must be true.
Well, English is so crippled by its rhymes. I insist thus emphatically on the importance of genius. You can see why academics love this, right? It's like, we're the geniuses. We're the ones who are testing authority, testing authority. We test authority. Oh, but,
yes, we all agree that we test authority. And if you disagree, get out.
Well, he has described the way that happens. And the necessity of allowing it to unfold itself freely, both in thought and in practice, being well aware that no one will deny the position in theory, but knowing that almost everyone in reality is totally indifferent to it. People think genius a fine thing if it enables a man to write an exciting poem or paint a picture. But in its true sense, that of originality in thought and action, though no one says that it is not a thing to be admired, nearly all at heart think that they can do very well without it. I mean, he's kind of not wrong, but unhappily, this is too natural to be wondered at. Originality is the one thing which unoriginal minds cannot feel the use of.
I was just thinking, just wait a minute, he'll contradict himself again.
Oh yeah, we're getting there.
You say he's not wrong, but wait a minute, there he goes.
It's like if they could see what it would do for him, it would not be originality. The first service which originality has to render them is that of opening their eyes, which being what's fully done, they would have a chance of being themselves original. Meanwhile, recollecting that nothing was ever yet done which someone was not the first to do, that all good things which exist are the fruits of originality, let them be modest enough to believe that there is something still left for it to accomplish, and assure themselves that they are more in need of originality the less they are conscious of the want. I mean, you can feel the sort of, it's the it's a kind of Mill was not a romantic. He was technically utilitarian. But mid 19th century, you got, this sort of feeling of the romantic genius is
Yeah.
definitely
Well, he certainly thought that of himself.
well, he was mocked for being so mechanical because of his learning, and so we kind of like overcompensated. We're getting to the good bit. Here we go. In sober truth, whatever homage may be professed or even paid to real or supposed mental superiority, the general tendency of things throughout the world is to render mediocrity the ascendant power among mankind. Heaven forbid. Right? In ancient history, and
Everybody who won an election is dumber than me.
okay, now I would say he did stand for parliament.
Did he lose?
I
don't know.
Let me see. Now I can't remember. I think he lost, and then oh no, he was elected to parliament in 1865.
Eventually it worked.
Apparently without canvassing or paying agents to canvass for him. So no election shenanigans for him. But so he's but you'll get now this is where he really pulls out the big guns, right? Okay, so mediocrity is the ascendant power of mankind, and this is to the tyranny of the majority that he's been worrying about, and the tyranny and you've saying that he's locating Christians. He doesn't really, like, they're too easy to hit with his invective. In ancient history, in the Middle Ages, and in a diminishing degree through the long transition from feudality to the present time, the individual was a power in himself. I mean, this is hilarious because he's in the mid-19th century saying the Middle Ages were the great age of individuality, which is literally the opposite of what his contemporaries are saying. Oh no, like Marx, the Middle Ages, that's when, everybody was, lost, or Burckhardt publishing exactly at the same time as Mill, saying the Renaissance came and freed everyone from their stifling, group. So everybody, all that we learn from this is everybody in 1859 is obsessed with this idea, the individual, and how he doesn't have a voice anymore. Why doesn't the individual have a voice anymore? Actually, Mill published this, right? And if he either had great talents or a high social position, he was a considerable power, right? You could be somebody in the Middle Ages, not now in 1859. At present, individuals are lost in the crowd. In politics, it is almost a triviality to say that public opinion now rules the world. The only power deserving the name is that of masses and of governments, while they make themselves the organ of the tendencies and instincts of masses. Oh, what? Right? Liberal democracy, there is no such thing, because as far as he's concerned, his government in the day, he does get elected to parliament, hilarious, is the power of the government is by making itself the organ of the tendencies and instincts of masses. This is as true in the moral and social relations of private life as in public transactions. Those whose opinions go by the name of public opinion are not always the same sort of public. Hold on to your horses. In America, they are the whole white population. The masses, right? We're the dumb ones.
Yeah.
Okay. This is 1859. So there's no intellectuals or geniuses or eccentrics or anything in America. It's the whole white population belongs to this.
I can see how he got elected.
In England. In England, yes. Chiefly the middle class. But they are always a mass. That is to say, collective mediocrity.
Yeah, he didn't like them. That's why I was like, has he been reading Marx? Yes, it was a slam against the middle class. Which
it's totally a slam against the middle class. It gets better though. It's like, and what is still a greater novelty, the mass do not now take their opinions from dignitaries in church. See, so he's not actually blaming the church directly or state, from ostensible leaders or from books. Everybody who's sick of the internet and sick of the opinions and all those, like, the swishing waves that I was talking about at the beginning, their thinking is done for them by men much like themselves, addressing them, podcasting maybe, or speaking in their name on the spur of the moment through the newspapers. It's an indictment of mass culture in the 19th century because of the newspaper. That's literally what he's upset about.
It's an indictment of the individual maybe having a say, but he says no, they don't really. They're just listening to the papers.
Totally.
But he's also a free speech absolutist.
Yep.
So he's basically a contrarian.
Yep.
Who's got so good at resisting authority that he even started resisting himself.
I'm not complaining of all of this. I do not assert that anything better is compatible as a general rule with the present low state of the human mind. If you think that like things were better in the Victorian age, he would differ. But that does not hinder the government of mediocrity from being mediocre government. No government by a democracy or a numerous aristocracy, either in its political acts or in the opinions, qualities, and tone of mind which it fosters, ever did or could rise above mediocrity, except insofar as the sovereign many have let themselves be guided, which in their best times they always have done, by the counsels and influence of a more highly gifted and instructed one or few. See how right you were, and you didn't get to this part. The initiation of all wise or noble things comes and must come from individuals, generally at first from some one individual. The honor and glory of the average man is that he is capable of following that initiative, that he can respond internally to the wise and noble things and be led to them with his eyes opening. I am not countenancing the sort of hero worship which applauds the strong man of genius. I mean, he's actually calling for influencers, which is like, I mean, it's all so funny because he's writing a pamphlet that's published to sway people's opinions about how horrible it is that people are writing their opinions in newspapers.
I was just thinking as you're reading that, I know he was after his time, but I would love to have heard Chesterton respond to this. It would have been hilarious.
Well, Chesterton really does. I mean, that's the thing. Chesterton is pointing out constantly how silly this kind of thing is.
Yeah,
it's like the mass and the mediocre and the such. This sort of hero worship, which applauds the strong man of genius for forcibly seizing on the government of the world and making it do his bidding in spite of himself. Oh, no, I don't want a strong man government. No. All he can claim is freedom to point out the way. The power of compelling others into it is not only inconsistent with the freedom and development of all the rest, but corrupting to the strong man himself. It does seem, however, that when the opinions of masses of merely average men are everywhere becoming the dominant power, the counterpoise and corrective to that tendency would be the more and more pronounced individuality of those who stand on the higher eminences of thought. Good luck with that, right? It is in these circumstances, most especially, that exceptional individuals, instead of being deterred, should be encouraged in acting differently from the mass. In other times, there was no advantage in their doing so, unless they acted not only differently, but better. In this age, the mere example of nonconformity, the mere refusal to bend the knee to custom is itself a service. Precisely because the tyranny of opinion is such as to make eccentricity a reproach, it is desirable in order to break through that tyranny that people should be eccentric. It's like the eccentricity has always abounded when and where strength of character is abounded, and the amount of eccentricity in a society has generally been proportional to the amount of genius, mental vigor, and moral courage which it contained. That so few now dare to be eccentric marks the chief danger of the time. Okay, I think that's my pass.
My head.
Yeah, I know.
He's just an angry old man. He's Bernie Sanders from the 19th century, just screaming and complaining about how awful everybody else is.
He is. The funny thing about it is he's most upset. He's saying the masses of mediocre men take their opinions from men just like themselves, aka, I don't know, American Fire with Ace, or Joe Rogan, or I don't know, Tucker Carlson counts as an ordinary man. I think he's a liberal. See what I did there?
Classical liberal.
Oh, classical liberal, definitely. Did he really say that? Oh, it's heavily implied, right? Right? I mean, it's like he's indicting everything that people who invoke him seem to think he is in favor of. It's like your mind is collapsing by this point. It's like, is he really on our side? And he's not, as Casey very wisely understands. He doesn't expect these experiments to go on indefinitely. And that's where it really flips, right? He says that you want to have these experiments. You want to have these eccentrics going on and testing everything until you make enough progress, at which point the gradual narrowing of the bounds of diversity of opinion is, in fact, at once inevitable and indispensable. Quote.
Unless it's Christian, right?
What? No. As mankind
No, I just
improves,
added that.
the number of doctrines which are no longer disputed or doubted will be constantly on the increase. This is also, of course, what's happened in the recent past, right? It's like we can't debate that anymore, right? And the well-being of mankind may almost be measured by the number and gravity of the truths which have reached the point of being uncontested.
I have heard this from a university professor at not your university.
My university is still doing pretty well, but it's we're
years ago, and in response to some students who wanted to have a controversial debate over a topic, he said, "No,
that's settled.
We'll only debate things that are debatable. This is not debatable, so we're not going to debate it." And I'm thinking, what's not debatable? I mean, if you are correct, then you'll win the debate, and you're obviously more experienced, because this was an older guy back then. He was in his our age, 50s and 60s, and these were a bunch of like early 20-somethings. It's taking candy from a baby, especially if you're correct. So why not have the debate? Nope, not debatable. I'm not going to debate it. He didn't even want it discussed.
Well, and in that sense, he was completely in the spirit of Mill's On Liberty, ironically. Yes. Right.
Correct.
It's like you set Mill up, and Mill's saying we need these geniuses who are going to push back against society. Oh, but eventually things are you're going to come to true understanding of things, and there'll be fewer and fewer things to debate. These two things contradict themselves. And
yes.
and his insistence that, ironically, the kinds of things that we would say with liberal democracy, right? How do you have a liberal democracy? You have people sharing their opinions in the newspapers, and as far as he's concerned, it's stupid people, mediocre people. I mean, the entire white population in the United States at this point, pretty funny, the middle class in England at that point. And these people, as far as he's concerned, they're not going to come up with good ideas by way of their debates in the newspapers or on their podcasts. They're just talking to themselves.
So what does his campaign look like? You're all worthless and weak. Now get out and vote for me.
Well, he didn't campaign. I mean, I think at this point, there's the Parliament has to go through a number of reforms in the 19th century. One of these is to root out rotten boroughs that are just in the gift of particular lords, because they can say vote for him. Anyway. So Mill, he's constantly talking out of both sides of his mouth in this argument, because he's, the tyranny, he's saying governmental tyranny, and then the kinds, he does have a sort of applications at the end, and he tries to go through some that you might test out, and you could say it's like the seatbelt laws are a good million test, right? Is it appropriate to make people wear their seatbelts, to have laws against them wearing their seatbelts? He also does things like polygamy, because the Mormons are a feature in people's attention in the 1859, and so it's like, well, there's these Mormons in the United States, and they have multiple wives. Is this wrong or right? And those, he likes these kind of he most of his experiments that he comes to are. So I'm flipping back and forth between my class notes, my blog post, and his text. The experiments that he says. So he does say, we have a right to choose the society most acceptable to us. We have a right to act upon our unfavorable opinion of anyone, not to the oppression of his individuality, but in the exercise of ours. Okay. Society can protect itself through punishments. But he has these various experiments in living, includes examples about eating pork around Muslims, public amusements and Puritans. If socialist opinions spread, that may become infamous in the eyes of the majority to possess more property than a very small amount, or any income not earned by manual labor. He talks about prohibition, polygamy. I mean, but what I say is the confusion in modern liberalism is, in fact, like foundational to its premises, because you don't know how to solve these things. You can't solve it by way of mass opinion, because as far as he's concerned, mass opinion is the problem. But on the other hand, you're going to do enough of these experiments and test things out in your arguments and eventually come to things that you can't argue about anymore. Like it's operationally unworkable.
Mm-hmm. And he's going to throw out these arguments, repeatedly, as he does. Like I said, he's very repetitive in this pamphlet, until it gets stuck in people's heads that, yes, you can do whatever you want as long as you don't hurt somebody else. Well, that sounds very reasonable. And look, people are still saying that well into the 21st century. They're still saying it, and you can keep saying that and never have to test it, right? Because it works for every occasion.
Well, ironically, we've been testing it for nearly 200 years in terms of, thinking that this is,
I think we have
a good argument. He goes on to talk about diversity and why it's important.
But he doesn't believe it. My opinion.
Yeah. So, again, he's talking about public opinion. He's saying public opinion is always oppressing you. And in this sense, he is actually describing a way in which public opinion operates. We've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're the eccentric ones, right? But just saying, Mill doesn't give you a way out, right? He doesn't solve this. There is one characteristic of the present direction of public opinion peculiarly calculated to make it intolerant of any marked demonstration of individuality. The general average of mankind are not only moderate in intellect, but also moderate inclinations. They have no tastes or wishes strong enough to incline them to do anything unusual. 1859, right? And they consequently do not understand those who have, and class all such with the wild and intemperate whom they are accustomed to look down upon. I mean, this is the period in which, I don't know,
talking about
opium smoking is the thing. Now, in addition to this fact, which is general, we have only to suppose that a strong movement has set in towards the improvement of morals, and it is evident when we have what we have to expect. In these days, such a movement has set in. Much has actually been effected in the way of increased regularity of conduct and discouragement of excesses, and there is a philanthropic spirit abroad for the exercise of which there is no more inviting field than the moral and prudential improvement of our fellow creatures. He doesn't approve of this, right? It's like
no, he was very disturbed by the religious revival that was going on in the late 19th century. That probably went a long way of prompting him to write this, I would guess.
He'd lost his job, so and Harriet had died. The tendencies of the times caused the public to be more disposed than at former periods to prescribe general rules of conduct and endeavor to make everyone conform to the approved standard. And that standard, express or tacit, is to desire nothing strongly. So moderation, right? So you're not supposed to be like. Its ideal of character is to be without any marked character. This is the same period of Dickens, right? So he's saying nobody has any real character anymore. To maim by compression, like a Chinese lady's foot. Every part of human nature which stands out prominently and tends to make the person markedly dissimilar in outline to commonplace humanity. A Chinese lady's foot. Interesting image to invoke, don't you think?
But foot binding?
Oh, yeah. The despotism of custom is everywhere the standing hindrance to human advancement, being an unceasing antagonism to that disposition to aim at something better than customary, which is called, according to circumstances, the spirit of liberty, or that of progress or improvement. The spirit of
human advancement. He doesn't define what advancement means, though.
It means, come on, social experiments. The spirit of improvement is not always the spirit of liberty, for it may aim at forcing improvements on an unwilling people. And the spirit of liberty, insofar as it resists such attempts, may ally itself locally and temporally with the opponents of improvement. But the only unfailing and permanent source of improvement is liberty, since by it, recognize he doesn't think the Americans are doing any of this because we're all in the mass of the mediocre in 1859. So there. I think Westminster College is founded by then. I think it's founded in 1832. So that college where Churchill spoke about Western tradition, nothing like heroic or individual happening in that college, because Americans are all the same. Okay. The spirit of liberty, insofar as it resists such attempts, may ally itself locally and temporally with the opponents of improvement. But the only unfailing and permanent source of improvement is liberty, since by it there are as many possible independent centers of improvement as there are individuals. The progressive principle, however, in either shape, whether as the love of liberty or of improvement, is antagonistic to the sway of custom, involving at least emancipation from that yoke. I mean, you see how, in fact, the left of today is liberal in his sense, right? That they don't want tradition or custom. And the contest between the two constitutes the chief interest in the history of mankind. The greater part of the world has, properly speaking, no history, because the despotism of custom is complete. This is the case over the whole East. Custom is there in all times, the final appeal. Justice and right mean conformity to custom. The argument of custom no one, unless some tyrant intoxicated with power, thinks of resisting. And we see the result. Those nations, the East. Consider 1859. British, what are they up to? Hold that thought. Those nations must once have had originality. They did not start out of the ground populous, lettered, and versed in many arts of life. They made themselves all this and were then the greatest and most powerful nations of the world. Where are they now? The subjects or dependents of tribes whose forefathers wandered in the forests when theirs had magnificent palaces and gorgeous temples, but over whom custom exercised only a divided rule with liberty and progress. A people, it appears, may be progressive for a certain length of time and then stop. When does it stop? When it ceases to possess individuality. If a similar change should befall the nations of Europe, you can almost hear Churchill, it will not be exactly the same shape. The despotism of custom with which these nations are threatened is not precisely stationariness. It prescribes singularity, but it does not preclude change, provided all change together. We have discarded the fixed customs of our forefathers. Everyone must still dress like other people, but the fashion may change once or twice a year. We just take care of that. When there is change, it shall be for change's sake. Okay, he's talking about that. We're progressive, blah, 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 blah. It's individuality that we war against. We have a warning example in China, a nation of much talent and in some respects even wisdom, owing to the rare good fortune of having been provided in an early period with a particularly good set of customs. Oh, wait, what? The work in some measure of men to whom even the most enlightened European must accord under certain limitations the title of sages and philosophers. But on the other hand, they've become stationary, have remained so for thousands of years, and if they are ever to be further improved, it must be by foreigners. They have succeeded beyond all hope in what English philanthropists are so you get it now, right? Industriously working at.
He's an agent. Okay, I get it. He's an agent of the empire. He's an agent of the British Empire.
What was his job until 1858?
I don't know.
He was a clerk at the East India Company.
Holy shit, sorry. He's just a propagandist. Oh, good grief.
I mean, the binary here is amazing, right? It's like...
no wonder it's so repetitive.
Well, and it's okay. He said the modern regime of public opinion, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he worked for the East India Company until it was dissolved and he lost his job, right? He at age 17, he had entered the examiner's office at India House. He was promoted to assistant examiner at age 18. He served for 30 years, from 1826 to 1856, in charge.
Most people would consider that a retirement.
In charge of but the company itself was dissolved. In charge of the British East India Company's relations with the Indian states. He was literally in charge of the British East India Company's relations with India.
And they need progress
and individuality and the tyranny of custom. And he's in the middle of, I mean, the irony of all of this, he's in the middle of the period that other people would think is the great, rise of the British Empire, because they're like opium wars in India and everything like that. And it's like following the Crystal Palace exhibition in 1851, when they've shown off all their industry of the world and their magnificence, and all he sees, and it's so ironic and so telling and so the paradoxes are the same ones to a certain extent we're wrestling with now, of extension and mass media and this feeling of I don't have any power or control anymore. I wish I could live like I wanted, but I can't because this mass is telling me I can't. But he himself has been working for them. He was chief of the examiner's office until the company was dissolved in 1858. On its dissolution, he was given a pension of £1,500 and he retired to a villa in France near Avignon.
Sounds like hell.
He's
poor man.
Well, so he wasn't an academic at all. He had this, odd education from began his formal education at age 2, reading Greek by age 3. By age 8, had read Aesop's Fables, Xenophon, and the whole of Herodotus in the original, along with 6 dialogues of Plato and the works of various other authors. He started Latin at age 8, along with geometry and algebra, scholastic philosophy, and Aristotle's logic at 12. He was reading Adam Smith at 13. His father was a firm believer in the idea of the mind as a blank slate on which every experience is recorded. And the problem was therefore, and this, you can see modern educational theory in this. The problem is to form the mind purposefully by educating it from as early as age as possible, but shaping the mind. And then he comes out of this saying, well, eccentrics are needed and they need to be original and experimental. The mass society is oppressing us. Custom is oppressing us. But he worked literally for the empire.
Right. And if you can get everybody to ditch their customs, then maybe they can introduce new ones that they can control.
Wipe the slate clean, start over.
Yep. Year 0.
Right. So he's liberal in the leftist sense of revolutionary, but not in the sense of the French philosophers, because he is more educated in the classics and got like Aristotelian logic and stuff like that. But he's a confusing guy. Okay, we've had some comments here. Gnarly Bird. Okay, let me catch up with you. We were talking about John and Gnarly Bird have been having a whole conversation alongside us. All right. Dead air is better than a dead soul. There you go. Consenting in sin is still sin. Yes, noble, savage, pagan is not realistic. Either you're ready to accept Christ or not. Toleration and nice is when you're the one being tolerated, right? Gnarly Bird saying, the wings of enthusiasm for individualism impresses the mind. People remain blind, blaming materialism. Society's rude, blaspheming, demonically possessed teeming, beguiled hatred towards the sacred. Portals to nightmares, not dreaming. Amen. Do not buy Satan's greatest trick that Christians can't be Catholic. Yes. Gnarly Bird's writing poetry in the comments. You need to copy these out before the stream's over so that you can keep them. Because they vanish once I stop, right?
Yes, they go poof.
They go poof. The battle to keep chastity, a true struggle of vanity, humiliation, mortification, teaching us through the Trinity. Hallelujah. Mills is the daffodils author. I don't know what that means. Progress rarely says where the end is. Well, yes, John, the progress is like change. But what's funny about Mill is saying eventually we're going to find all these things that have been decided by our testing them. And then we can't debate them anymore, just like Casey said, her teacher said. Oh, John Abrisi saying, the duplicity and insincerity of all this became glaringly clear during the coercion period of the 1880s Irish land war run by Gladstone and the so-called liberals. Yes, right. The arresting without trial of Parnell, etc., for speeches, words, and the content of published manifestos.
Still going on, isn't it?
Yep.
At least in Britain and in some cases here.
Well, what's interesting about this is it's philosophically incoherent and therefore it cannot answer our questions. And the primary one, the thing that I think Mill is interesting to note is he's responding to the McLuhan moment of mass printing, which
it's not what Mill read. It's not meant to be addressed or understood. It's only meant to sow confusion. I'm convinced now. And doubt.
I've given you a college education in one evening. Right there you go. You don't need to go.
Thank you.
He didn't go either. So it's like, but why do you think it's purposefully sowing confusion? I don't think he thinks that. I think he's confused, and he's kidding himself.
He is confused.
But I'm not sure that's.
He is confused, but the fact that he spread this out, and again, it's very repetitive. Over 4 chapters, sounds like he's at least trying to convince somebody else of what he's convinced of, which is very I'm lacking the correct word here. It's vaporous. It's not substantive. But he desperately wants to convince other people that this is the right way to look at the world, that you shouldn't be looking at concrete things, that concrete things in culture and society and law shouldn't be there, except under very few exceptions.
Except for when they're settled.
Except when they're settled.
I think it's riddled with contradictions. And if you read it, if you read it carefully enough and try to parse the argument so that you recognize he can't get out, right? He's trapped in the trap that he has set.
I wonder what constituency he was elected into. I'm just curious now about the history of that. I find the electoral system in Britain very confusing. The parliamentary system of standing for office there. It's definitely not the same as here, because as I understand it, you vote for a party and not the person. So the party puts people in the positions they want them to be in, but they still have to get votes somewhere.
I think it was different. I think they've changed it since 1859. I'm not positive. It is a different structure than ours. That's true.
Yeah, it's very incoherent what he's written. So politics was obviously his, if not fallback, then his second career. But somebody wanted him there for a reason.
Right. He'd worked it. So what happened with the East India Company is dissolved and it's taken over, and then the British Empire rises out of that. Victoria actually takes the title Empress sometime after this. Yeah. So there technically had not been an empire until after East India Company is dissolved, and the government takes it over. But so it's interesting that he's not saying it's the government that's the tyrant. He's saying it's society because of the newspapers and because of the pressure.
That is interesting, isn't
right?
it?
The pressure of the opinion that he feels from other people's mediocrity.
Look, there's things we want to do in Parliament, and you rubes have just got to get in line and just give up your stupid culture, okay?
I don't think he's talking about Parliament at that point. 1859, he's not in Parliament.
He's not.
No, he's not in government.
I'm saying this is the message. You stupid rubes, get in line and get, open up your tiny little minds to possibilities of anything else other than what you've been living with. Yeah, it is right, but
it's not specific. There's nothing.
It's vacuous,
right? It's just experiment. They just give the examples of various things, but they're like prohibition and Sunday openings and pork and polygamy, right? It's mainly social, and he is more famous in other contexts as a philosopher of utilitarianism. So, I haven't read a lot of Mill because this drives me nuts, so I'm not inclined to go searching. My prime takeaway is liberalism now fits exactly what Mill is saying here, and it's as incoherent as Mill. Right. It's like it's completely borne out the ways that he argues, which is flip when you don't feel like your advantage is there. So, which I say, I blame Mill. On the one hand, he claims to be defending the liberty of the individual against the despotism of society. But on the other, he, like my liberal academic colleagues, believes contradictory things. Not that believing contradictory things makes him a bad person, just a person, but that he said these contradictory things with such authority, aka long-winded sentences more or less designed to convince you he's smarter than you are, that it is all too easy ending up agreeing with him and never putting his arguments to the test. Remember those remarkable ancient medieval individuals who had power in their own right, power from the talent and high status by which they were able to achieve social and intellectual greatness. You know very well who those people are today, the ones who pride themselves on knowing more than the masses because they think for themselves. These are the people, the liberals, whom Mill imagined saving society from its mediocrity, quis custodia ipsos custodes, as Mill might put it, thanks to the classical education his father made sure he received. It's all well and good looking down on the masses when you are confident that you do not participate in their mediocrity. Here I'm preaching to my colleagues, right? When you,
Yeah.
as a member of the institution founded on the proposition that understanding depends on constant Socratic debate, pride yourself on putting your ideas to the test. When you are confident that the only reason people could disagree with you is that they, unlike you, have not tested their opinions properly through recent debate, becomes a kind of, dare I say it, religious belief to be defended at all odds against heresy. Mill had his own orthodoxy, quote, "The only freedom which deserves the name is that of pursuing our own good in our own way, so long as we do not attempt to deprive others of theirs or impede their efforts to obtain it. Each is the proper guardian of his own health, whether bodily or mental and spiritual." The problem is that this freedom was all Mill cared about, and thus all he hypothesized ought to be put to the test. He gives a number of examples in the fourth and fifth part of his essay, where he describes a variety of experiments in living. What ought society do about the questions of free trade, the sale of poisons, drunkenness, fornication, and gambling? We spent some time in the casino, right? To what extent ought society be involved in the education of children? How far ought society restrict the adherents of one religion, say Christianity, from offending those of another, say Islam? What about those instances in which Puritans attempted to put down both public and private amusements? Should there be sumptuary laws that prevent the rich from spending their income in a way that offends the less rich? What about Mormons and their practice of polygamy? And I conclude, it's almost as if Mill were giving a blueprint for the debates which we are having now, which in a way he did.
Yeah. Yeah. He framed the debate, I suppose you could say. It's moral relativism that he's proposing.
Yeah.
Because you can't agree on whose morals, therefore it has to be relative. Yeah, I had a friend demonstrate this with another friend of hers. I wasn't there. I was told about this. It was pretty hilarious. And they were very close, so she could get away with this. Puts her hands around his throat as if to choke him and said, "You see this? This feels really good to me, so that makes it okay."
Oh, very good. Very good demonstration. Yes.
Right. Then she let him go. So it wasn't her, don't worry.
Well, ironically, and I end my blog post with this, is once diversity of character and custom had hitherto prevented Europe from going the way of the custom-bound East, but in Mill's verse, it already begins to possess this benefit in considerably less degree. It is decidedly advancing towards the Chinese ideal of making all people alike. And he goes on to argue that if his civilization is no longer able to defend itself from the barbarians, too bad. Quote, "If this be so, the sooner such a civilization receives notice to quit, the better."
I've heard that recently.
Well, they're echoing Mill again, right? So the last thing I ever want to hear from anybody is that we want to be classical liberals. Because
they think there's a difference. I'm not a liberal versus classical. The classical liberal means I don't think men should be allowed into women's dressing rooms or bathrooms or on athletic teams.
Why? They're just experiments in living. Aren't we supposed to experiment?
Right.
Just experimenting.
So that's just it. There is no defensible difference between liberal and classic liberal after reading this.
Right.
After reading John Mill, where all of this came from.
Right.
He already saw it coming and embraced it. He was fine with that.
Well, and he was also fine with the collapse of civilization too.
He mentioned adults and children. He did not mention male and female. He never mentioned that. It kind of mentioned it when he talked about Mormons and polygamy, but he made no difference between sex. So yeah, people who are promoting, the complete abolition of female spaces, they could use this document very easily.
And they have. Mill is also,
whether or not they know they have, yes.
He also wrote in favor of women's suffrage and things like that. So there's more, that you're picking up on the echoes of those arguments here. It is in Mill's overall project for sure. But the thing is, there's no at ground. There's no way that you test, right? There's no standard by which you decide which of these experiments is actually good or not. If all you've said is they don't hurt anybody.
Yes, and that's the argument that's being made. Well, I'm not hurting anybody.
But Chesterton would make, it's like, exactly what does that mean? right? When are you
Yeah.
not hurting? Because you
Not
have no
physically hurting?
society. Yeah. When it's like if you destroy custom and social functioning, and the society falls apart because of your individual
Well, this
actions
is
not
right.
hurting anybody.
Exactly.
It, you know,
This is the exact reason we used to have no such thing as no fault divorce, because divorce was understood to be destructive to families, to children, and to society around it, because it's the extended family that gets destroyed too in all of those relationships, and those relationships are closely tied into how well a neighborhood is run, or a town, or a county, and it just keeps going out in these concentric circles out off of that one decision. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. They understood this 100 years ago, and that's been lost because of the promotion of the individual happiness, right, above everything else. The individual adult's happiness, I should say, not the children's. They never matter.
yeah, Mill they didn't have children. Harriet had a daughter, I think, but with her first husband. Um, uh, he didn't really talk. I don't remember him mentioning happiness.
No, he didn't. I'm just saying, well, we started this conversation because 3 weeks ago we were talking about Pope and happiness. And then afterwards, you and I were discussing how now happiness today gets defined as the individual gets to do whatever they want. And you said, that's Mill.
Mm-hmm.
So let's discuss Mill next time. So I should shut up next time.
Now we have to talk about it's like, well, now we've done Mill, and you see the problem.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that how it is that he didn't talk about that. No, he didn't. But his ideas redefined for people in the 20th century, particularly the mid 20th century after the Second World War, because people were weakened. They were very much weakened morally and physically and spiritually after these two world wars, that happiness gets redefined as what the individual wants. And then decisions start being made that are destructive and say, oh, I'm not hurting anybody. It's just two adults making a decision to split up, right? But then it splits up a family, and that splits up more and more. And it spreads like a virus. And before you know it, you've devastated entire sections of your community. And that's true. That's true. I don't want to get into too much detail about that because it's a whole nother issue,
right,
about 20th century liberal social programs. But it mattered. The point is, it mattered. With the redefinition of happiness because of Mill mattered. There were real world bad consequences. Now he would probably say, well, what's bad? Define bad. Well, he doesn't want to define anything when he doesn't have to.
Limits to the authority of society over the individual. If protection against themselves is confessedly due to children and persons underage, is not society equally bound to afford it to persons of mature years who are equally incapable of self-government? If gambling or drunkenness or incontinence or idleness or uncleanliness are as injurious to happiness and as great a hindrance to improvement as many or most of the acts prohibited by law, why, it may be asked, should not law, so far as is consistent with practicability and social convenience, endeavor to repress these also? There is no question here, it may be said, about restricting individuality or impeding the trial of new and original experiments in living. The only things is sought to prevent are things which have been tried and condemned from the beginning of the world until now. Things which experience has shown not to be useful or suitable to any person's individuality. There's his utilitarianism. So he's more about usefulness, but for what end, right, than he is about happiness. There must be some length of time and amount of experience after which a moral or prudential truth may be regarded as established. And it is merely desire to prevent generation after generation from falling over the same precipice which has been fatal to their predecessors. It's this utilitarianism argument, which is also a feature of a lot of the social program arguments now. It's like, well, if it hurts one person but benefits 10, isn't it better? That is also deeply embedded in our decision-making rhetoric. So thanks to Mill.
Made it into Star Trek too.
Oh yeah. There was some Star Trek on the television on the trip home too. So, we hit every part of this sort of problem. The happy truth is that we're not million, right? America, he didn't even think we had the capability of being anything other than mediocre, us white Americans.
You mean we were too stupid to take his advice? Unfortunately, quite a lot of us did, but
they got influenced by
trying to reverse that.
So we are still in quest of the truth of the American experiment, which I hope we have now ribaldly established. And everybody can go read Mill and disagree with us. Let us know in the comments. That it's not this liberty of the individual argument, because that is philosophically, socially, and psychologically, spiritually incoherent. So there.
So there.
So there.
So say we.
So, we do. We've tested this, and we have the absolute authority to be able to say so. All right. Define bad. Hurts others. Bad. Who determine what is bad? Define hurt. All of this, right? Okay, yes, John Myers, the waters of baptism cleanse sin, but do not make people equal in ability. See, we need to, and this is our long-term project on the Mosaic Ark and in Draco Chemicus, is make Christianity like sticky again in the sort of mythological, social, and psychological way that it needs to be. And if people argue the way we often argue philosophically or scientifically on the internet, and people get stuck in these million debates, it goes nowhere. I mean, Mill has handicapped anyone who claims to talk about differences of opinion and debate in the way we'll have our eccentricities and come up with new ideas, and it's like, about what? And I think maybe we should do some Chesterton combat. Chesterton is always, Chesterton points out how silly all that kind of thing is, because you're always pretending to be original by being exactly like everybody else. I mean, it's too easy. It's shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mill's not the answer.
No.
So we'll have to keep looking. I'm reading the comments. The comments are quite... Define hurt. Good luck with that, darling. Okay, well, it's an ongoing conversation, and now at least I hope we've inoculated you against the infection that claiming to be liberal always carries. How's that? For our opening service to the internet, to the continuing quest for happiness, as per our founding as a people. No, we haven't figured that out yet either. Imagine communities, where we find them, right? Okay. Anything else left to add?
Read more Pope, less Mill.
But we still have Pope to go, right? We can always be coming back to Pope. I'm reading right now. I'm almost finished with Northrop Frye's Anatomy of Criticism, and I am happy to report that we are hitting so many of his registers in writing Draco Chemicus. We are on target to write at least something that should be recognized as literature. So, yes. It's definitely in the romance. It's definitely more romance than anything else, because I learned from Frye that Spenser, our model, is the greatest English romantic of this category. But it takes some explaining, and I think it's Frye this is from 1957, so 100 years later than Mill. There is a lot of great scholarship out there that unfortunately the last 50 years has obliterated in people's imagination. I mean, when I entered college, it was still kind of there in people's imagination, but we haven't been talking about it for a while. And it is not true that everything that people wrote in the past is ridiculous and silly, like what Mill wrote. It's not true that all the classics are not worth reading, but understanding and discerning what the texts are doing is trickier than people imagine, and the AI is not going to help you.
No.
Nope. So we will. By carrying you in our ark around the shores of this stormy seas of the online world. Okay. Yes. Good. Okay. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back. We'll be back next week. Because I realized when we started in the first year, we managed to do every week because everything was locked down still and people weren't traveling that much. And we continue to travel. We will keep posting. I'll try to make it a practice this year to always post a link to the next live stream, but there will be some weeks where I'm away doing other things, including going to BaseCon. We got BaseCon coming up. So we'll we love you guys for being here with us live, and we will be posting regularly to tell you when the next one is. Right now, as far as we know, the next one's next week. So we'll see you next week. Good night, everyone.